We welcome you into another edition of Nets Pod with Sarah Kustok, presented by Ticketmaster. I'm Sarah Kustok, joined by, as always, a very special, one of my favorite guests. I'm starting to say that to everyone, but it really is true. My broadcast partner, the face and voice of our Yes on Nets, Brooklyn Nets telecast, of course, do a variety of things across the NBA, the WNBA, women's college basketball, all of it. You do it all, Ryan Ruocco.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being here on the pod once again, a recurring guest, and that we really, really appreciate.
No, I'm pumped to be a recurring guest, and I'm always pumped to be with you.
Well, I am thrilled as well, and thrilled to be here as we get set. We're about a quarter way through the NBA season, the Brooklyn Nets season. It was a slower start, as anticipated. The youngest team in the league by average age, yet, no surprise here with this group. They fought, they've come together, they've acclimated themselves really well. What are some of your overall impressions to this point of what we've seen out of the evolution of this group?
Well, the first 7 games, the way they struggled, knowing how young they are, knowing how much they were struggling defensively, I was looking at things and I was saying, there's a real chance that this team could lose 70 games. It really felt that way to me. And now I'm like, Ryan, you fool. Jordi Fernandez is their head coach. A Jordi team is never going to lose that many games. No. I just really believe that. Yeah. And, I think what we've seen is, first of all, he is going to demand a certain level of competitive fire and detail. And he's going to do whatever he has to get that out of his group, right? And we saw him actually, the first time they played Minnesota, right? It was just before that game where he said, I've got to find a way to get more out of these guys because this is not okay. And they lost that game, but he was encouraged by some of the things he saw in that. And since that point, they're 9-12, which I just think is so much closer to respectability than anybody would have projected. And so I know we'll get into a lot of different players and their contributions. And, I definitely feel like I'm, sometimes I'm a hardcore Jordi stan, but I just really believe that the first thing I think of is Jordi and what he's been able to get out of this group and how astonishing it is.
I couldn't agree more. I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's the broad picture view of what the record looks like. You mentioned at the 0-7 start. Now the Nets in this current frame, they've won 6 of their last 9, but they're in a mode of which that you see a level of confidence, you see a level of connectivity, the communication. And I do believe that begins at the top. I do believe that begins, and you say Jordi Fernandez, but you've got to go across the board of this entire coaching staff, how he's put it together, the shared responsibilities of everyone. You even think about that amazing Steve Hetzel when he, was taking the place of, filling in as head coach for Jordi Fernandez when he was out with illness. But there's so many aspects of it that I think that they make these players believe in themselves, believe in each other, and play for each other. And so I was talking to someone around the league, and who everyone has a lot of questions. Jordi has had many stops, of which he's had great success as an assistant coach. You look at his journey, his start, his beginnings in the G League, what he did with the Canton Charge, but being in such really championship level. I mean, Denver Nuggets, of course, but Sacramento Kings, places that he understands. Cleveland, of what it means to win. And so someone's like, well, how do you gauge that when the record may be what it looks like from the outside? And I think because we have the opportunity to see it on a day in, day out basis, we watch these players, we listen to them, we see what happens in practices, we see the incremental growth both collectively and individually. To me, that you cannot overlook that, and you cannot overlook the value of having found that in building a foundation. Because you could talk a lot about the work culture gets tossed around. But to me, it's about having a foundational piece of around the league. There's that level of respect. And I think Jordi has shown that in one. And I think, too, the defensive side of it. That's what's impressed me most. So you mentioned the 0-7. It wasn't just that. We both do. We do our boards. And at one podcast, we can go through all the numbers, all the things that we do. But one of it is always the league rankings. And they, for a better part of the beginning of the season, were dead last in defensive rating by a long shot.
They were on pace to be maybe the worst defensive team. I mean, on pace, it was 7 games, but they out of the gates, they had the worst defensive rating in history.
And it was by the numbers, it was by the eye test, it was by everything. So to me, the shift in that, and Jordi would talk in his press conferences of just being, no, this is how, because he understood the personnel he had, the youth that he had, and how he wanted to play. Like the type of pressure in the backcourt, the blitzing, changing, what all of that looked like comprehensively. And I think even there was moments I saw, I was like, man, you're just like, if you're not going to fit, you're like so exploited in so many areas because of these breakdowns and because of how this isn't coming together. And he just had such a resolute, like, no, this is what we're going to do. Guys are going to figure it out. Guys have figured it out. Month of December, they're number one in the league in defensive rating. And again, all of these small sample size, but it matters. Like there is ways in which you watch them come together. What have you seen? Just whether it's calling games, whether it's watching games, whether it's when you talk to people, you do games, national games around the league all the time. What stood out to you most about that shift?
Well, I feel like tactically, he's been able to maintain what you're talking about, right? Like this kind of sort of like resolute focus and aggression on the defensive end while also switching more, and so. Because they've switched more, they've been so stout at the 3-point line. They're in December. I believe right now they're first in as far as allowing the lowest 3-point rate for opponents on attempts. So allowing the smallest percentage of 3-point attempts from opponents, and then they are really good vertically at the rim. They've been giving up a ton of attempts at the rim. And yet not giving up a ton of conversion there. And so often when we hear Jordi even evaluating his younger players, he will talk about like verticality at the rim, to the point that it's just like something that stands out to me because it's just not something that you usually hear coaches mention as often as he does, especially with some players who aren't, let's say, centers, right? Like he's talked about with Yegor, like I'm really happy with his development and his ability to stay vertical, like in the paint. And you're like, you wouldn't think about that with Yegor, right? Like when you're thinking about his development. So what's been impressive to me is some of the like strict adherence to like, this is going to be some of our principles defensively. Then the adaptation of like, here's what we can do to get better. Like, right, we're going to switch more but as we give up more opportunities at the rim, like we're going to make it hard for opponents. That's like some of the sort of X and O stuff that we've been able to see. But then I just think like, they were dead last in October in defensive rating. They were 26th in November. They are first in December by a lot. They're allowing 102 points per 100 possessions in December. Oklahoma City is second, and they're 3 or 4 points per 100 behind that. Like, that's just, it's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous turnaround. That's not marginal improvement. That's absurd improvement. And I know some of it's schedule-based and everything else. But to me, that, again, speaks to the coaching because it's about the buy-in you're able to get from your guys to defend on. It's not like you look at this roster and you'd say, oh, well, this is like a roster that's just laden with defensively stout players. No, like this is taking a level of commitment from those guys. And that, I think you give the players credit and you give the coaches credit for being able to get that credit.
And players credit as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think that so often we become, and I say we as viewers and broadcasters and, fans and everyone, like in the most amazing, beautiful way. I don't know if numb is the right word, but like what these individuals are doing on the floor, how talented they are, how skilled they are, how quick and fast and athletic and strong, like all of these things that make up the elite echelon of what it takes to be a NBA player. So if you are a split second late, if you are a half, if you are a one step over or moving, is a difference between a foul or a block or making a defensive player deflection. All of those things is like the smallest, whether it's, margin for error or just actually making a play. And some of that just comes down to thinking and not overthinking or not thinking, and you're just reacting. And I think too, when you have a young group, like, they're comfortable. They're comfortable with each other. They're better communication. They have a better gauge of it. So then, like, all of that stuff now has become more instinctual and secondhand, as opposed to, okay, wait, where am I? Am I going under? Am I going over? Am I hedging here? Am I wait? Where am I supposed to drop? So I think that has obviously progressed. I want to, though, you mentioned Yegor. Go to the rookies, because too, like and there's been variability in, and Jordi Fernandez has challenged a lot of these rookies. We've seen Yegor as being one of those. Drake, everyone, like Danny, what he's contributed, Nolan being able to spend such a significant time with the Long Island Nets and what he's done with the Brooklyn Nets in some of his moments. You can go down the line, Ben Saraff as well. What has stood out to you about these rookies to this point in the development, in what we've seen and how they've been able to contribute?
I think, the first pod we did, we were talking about, like, how do we define success for the season for the Nets in a clear rebuilding season, right? And I said, for me, it's going to be about the rookies. It's all about them and their development. And I think at this point of the season, you'd have to be really happy with the way they have developed, right? Yeah. And, the Nets, it's not like they had the top pick in the draft, right? There's not the Cooper flag for their rookie class where it's just this guy who's, like, obviously got it, and he's already going to be here and a borderline all-star in year one, right? So it really is about the growth, right? It's not just about, like, who they are and the talent they're bringing. It's about, like, the growth that you see with them and then trying to project ahead. And I think that, seeing the growth of Yegor, seeing the way he responded to being challenged by Jordi, especially in the mid, latter parts of December, how he bounced back. I think also one thing that's been cool about Yegor is he seems to have a knack for the big moment, you want
to talk about a clutch, someone that wants the ball when the lights are brightest and the moment matters. Yeah. And he's come through it time and time and again. Yeah. It could be great nights for him. It could be when he's having a really rough shooting night. It does not matter.
Like, he has that rhythm to him, right? Where you can feel him, like, wanting the energy of that moment and then being able to punctuate it.
Wanting to be in those moments, to me, is a separator of so many different players.
Real quick aside to that point, one of my favorite people in the world is Hubie Brown, who I used to do a lot of NBA on ESPN games with, and of course is the Hall of Famer and one of the all-time great basketball minds, coaches, contributors in the history of our game. And he is also the best storyteller of any human I've ever met. And he used to, I won't tell you the full stories now, but he used to detail stories where, he would have his huddle at the end of a game, and he'd have players who maybe are the leading scorer on the team. But, like, when it was a one-possession game and he was going to draw up the play, they'd have their head down. And, like, they were basically giving him the energy of, like, don't pick me. Yeah. Don't draw that play up for me. And so then the media or whoever would ask him, like, how come you don't draw this play up for? And, he can't dime out his players, but he's like, believe me, there's reasons why, And so to your point, and his point with that was always like, you got to find those people who want that moment, and it's significant, and it's not always who you think. Sometimes it's your best player, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're ambivalent, sometimes they don't want anything to do with it, and sometimes they clearly do want that. And I think Yegor seems like a guy who does want that, just not having observed him in the huddle in those moments, but observing him on the floor in those moments, right? So that's super encouraging. I also think when you look at the rookies, watching Danny Wolf is really fun. Like, Danny's just, like, really fun to watch. And he has kind of, his offbeat, his offbeat handle, if you will, that opponents have trouble with. The comfort that he has played with. Like, Jordi went through recently when we were asking about Danny and just said, like, every stretch he's had, whether it was, in the summer, whether it was preseason, whether it was now, he's always looked like he belonged. And he's looked like just comfortable. And that's how it feels. He's impacting the game in a variety of different ways. I think he's been a great connector on the floor. He just looks like someone who people would want to play with.
I think the opportunity to have someone at that size that can shoot, like, this league has come down to, can you shoot, can you pass, can you dribble, and how efficiently and quickly can you make decisions? Yeah. And obviously defending. And I think defensively too for him, like you surround those lineups. We've seen him in many, whether it's closing lineup or stretches. You got him on the floor with even Nick and a Noah, a Michael Porter Jr., a Yegor. Like you are, speaking to why has there been also an uptick in the defensive numbers. Like part of it too is just that level of length and ability to play with a quickness. But I think he adds to that. And I do think the upside of him, it just showcases so much. But the ability, we've seen so much, and whether it's Nick and Noah or with Danny included, Michael Porter Jr., which we will get to, having an all-star campaign. The ability to have that size and to be able to invert pick, like sometimes it's not even inverted pick and rolls because of the way that Nick can handle or Noah can handle or all of those things just add to it. And I think even the flashes Drake has shown with his athleticism, how he gets up and down. I mean, so much as the health and staying on the floor. Noah Clowney. I want to talk about Noah.
Yeah.
You look at a player that has taken such a, to me, significant jump in year 3. I remember him sitting at Media Day talking about wanting to get to the paint more, penetration, get downhill, how he wanted to not just be one of those players who had size and was going to shoot the 3, which is a great, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the shot profile of him was the highest volume of what shots he was taking. It was definitely from the 3-point line. What has he shown you in his not only offensive evolution, but even more so what he's done defensively with his versatility that maybe you didn't even, I mean, we saw a lot of flashes of it, but from guarding on the perimeter, instincts around the basket, you mentioned the rim protection, verticality. What has he grown into for you?
Yeah, I feel like he's grown into a guy who you're really excited about, like you're excited about his growth. I think coming into this year, and even through the first couple of games, when I looked at Noah, I thought like, okay, so he can shoot some threes. Like, what else can he really do on the floor that's going to make you feel like, oh, I'm excited about his development, or I'm excited about him as a rotation player. And now watching him, as much as we focus on the rookies, I think Noah is a headliner for growth and development and kind of projecting ahead and excitement since he's gone into the starting lineup. And Jordi talked about this at one point. Like he's got his 21-year-old body now. He's got it, which is funny even thinking of a 21-year-old. I know it's funny thinking of that as like a man's body, but amongst 19-year-olds. But we talk about him being third year in the league, and you don't like. Yeah, he's 21. Yeah, he's 21. Yeah, and like that, like anybody. I'm 39. 21 does not feel like a man to me. It feels like a kid. But Jordi's point on like him being 21. Yeah. And kind of feeling, like more of a man being in his man's body, I think you can see that. I think when you put in the work that he's put into his physical development, which of course, Sean Marks and the Nets pour incredible resources into, I think that changes everything for you confidence-wise too. Any human can relate to. When you feel good about where you're at physically, your world changes. And I think what's happened with Noah is he's gotten stronger. And so he's playing with a level of confidence. So now we're seeing him, he takes that body bump, right? Like he's the one who's initiating it. He's been able to finish through contact at an incredibly high level. That's the thing that's impressed me the most. Yeah. The way he's been able to initiate and finish, has been something that we just didn't see the first 2 years. And that is a real encouraging thing for me, because now you look at kind of his offensive profile, like you were saying, you're like, oh, here's a guy who, yes, you have to guard him from the 3-point line, but now he's very comfortable putting it on the floor and initiating and making it happen and finishing at the rim through the contact. And, I think a lot of that is the byproduct of somebody who feels good about their strength and where they're at physically. And it's also translated on the defensive end. You look at not just his ability to block shots, but he's made a lot of plays in transition at the rim. He's made a lot of really big plays getting back in transition, being able to stay vertical, come up with big plays without fouling. So, yeah, I'm really impressed. And if you look at the Nets and you say, like, okay, well, what's at the core of this turnaround in their season? You'd look at Noah entering the starting lineup and their front court, and you say Claxton, Porter, Clowney. The way those three have played has been kind of the anchor of them being able to have success over, the last month.
I'll say Noah Clowney, a guest on Nets pod, which you'll have to check it out because he was tremendous. And he's saying that he's 21. I think the biggest takeaways for me as we were talking is he was talking about feeling like, yeah, I know but I feel like I'm a veteran. There's so many young players. And I think sometimes when you take on that type of responsibility and know you need that leadership, it just changes the dynamic of how you see things, how you're communicating. He's an extraordinarily mature individual. He's an extraordinarily intelligent and smart individual in not only how he sees the game, but how he sees people and how he understands the context of team. And part of what he was saying, and he said, the biggest thing when I got to the league that stood out to me was just how good everyone was. He's like, I knew I was a first-round pick. Like, it doesn't matter if you're undrafted, if you are here, the talent. And I think that changes the dynamic of how you work in the offseason, the work you need to put in, and the way we're seeing it translate into everything you said. Like, repeat on that because it's the finishing through contact. It's making reads. It's the ability to make passes. It's instinctually, defensively. Like, he shores up a lot of, some of the mistakes or guys get beat. Like, he's able to clean up a lot of things on the defensive end.
Nothing compares to catching your Brooklyn Nets live, and nobody knows that better than you. Nets fans, it all starts with buying tickets at Ticketmaster, the official ticket marketplace of the Nets and the NBA. Ticketmaster gets you to the game so you could experience all the sights, sounds, and styles in person. Put that jersey collection to use for the next game and get Nets tickets at Ticketmaster. Even if you're headed to the game last minute, Ticketmaster's got your back when it comes to scoring tickets. And there's no better brag than saying you saw it live. Get tickets at Ticketmaster.com/Nets.
Michael Porter Jr., another guest on the Nets pod, he was talking about his teammates. And please check out that episode because he was excellent. And he said, Noah's a guy that I feel like I've really taken under my wing. He said, because I see so much of things that I've been able to do in my game or offensively that he has, and the sky's the limit for him. Michael Porter Jr., for me, and I'll speak for, it has totally blown me away in my expectations of what I thought he potentially could be this quickly acclimating to this group, to this role, the added responsibility. That's play on the floor. That's also just the leadership aspect that he's shown off the floor and how he's really dove into that. What has he surprised you most with, I guess I would say, in how you've watched him play and maybe the productivity, yes, on the floor, but also just in general, the player that he has been a quarter of the way in now for the Nets?
I didn't realize he had this level of offensive versatility. I didn't realize he could be relied upon as such a central figure the way that he is. And, he was an extraordinary recruit out of high school, and obviously dealt with the back injury and whatnot coming out of the draft. And in Denver was a huge contributor to a championship team, but had a role, right? Like, the ball wasn't going to be in Michael Porter Jr.'s hands, as much as it is here. They have Nikola Jokic there, like, that's the way it is. And I think it's a great reminder too, for sometimes if a guy has, a level of talent, skill set, whatever, different geography can change how that's accessed, right? Yeah. And, the opportunity here is just different than Denver. But I didn't know it was in there. And we saw Jordi do some of that with Cam Johnson last year, right? Where a guy who, clearly had ability and skill, but was just completely broadened. And you saw, and that's kind of how I felt with Michael, where I'm just like, but Michael to an even higher degree, because the level of production, while he's had this level of efficiency, has absolutely been, all-star worthy. Whether he makes it or not, who knows? But it is 100% accurate to have him in that conversation with your chest out, because he's not only putting up those kind of numbers, he's impacting winning. That's the thing that surprised me the most. Like, if you'd have looked at the roster before the season, you would have said, I'm pretty sure Michael Porter Jr. is going to average 20, 22 points a game, right?
Yeah.
But was he going to impact winning like this? I don't know that anybody saw that, like the way he's been able to. It's been so impressive. And hearing his teammates talk about him from the leadership standpoint, I didn't know that part of him. And hearing them say, one of the things that we really love about Michael is he's somebody who's like continually giving us confidence. Like, he's a great hype man for them. And when you have a champion who's also putting up numbers like that and impacting winning like that, who's infusing you with confidence, that's going to have a tangible impact. I think that's what we've seen with MPJ.
Because I think it's sometimes we forget, you're looking at snippets of different moments or the points people are at their career. He was integral in that Denver Nuggets championship. Like, he had some huge, we talk about players that come up biggest in the most important, impactful moments. Like, he experienced that, he did that, he could translate to these guys. I just think his ability to, yes, the efficiency of numbers, but also the gravity that he has on the floor. He is the number one stop point for every defensive game plan, yet he's still able to put up the type of points he has, at the accuracy that he has, and then elevate the level of his teammates and how he's finding them. The synergy between him and Nick and how they work pick and rolls. You see that with Noah. There's just been so many complete aspects of his game that I think so often we see different players that feel ready for the responsibility to take on added roles, and they go to places that are given those opportunities, and it doesn't look the same. It's not the same. They're not able to produce and deliver in that same way. And you said it again, like there's so many deserving players and so many different seasons that do not make the All-Star game because of numbers, because of different things, the variance of that record-wise. But like you said, he's putting together an All-Star campaign. And that has been fun to watch, and fun to watch how it's really just infused a different life into this group. And I do believe added to the growth of some of these younger players. With that being said, Hot Ticket. You ready for some Hot Ticket?
I am so ready for it.
Presented by Ticketmaster. Experience your Nets live with Ticketmaster, the official ticket marketplace of the Brooklyn Nets. So we've kind of hit on a lot of them. So we're going to have to vary this up some, or not. Our 3 favorite storylines this season. You begin, and we're going to go back and forth.
I'm going to vary it up because we've talked about a couple things that I would have chosen and was planning to choose, and so I'm going to give you a little out there one. Okay,
you giving us an out there?
Yeah, I'm just going to give you an out there one. Jordi's ability to whistle. Okay, I just want. It's one of my favorite things to. It's one of my favorite things to witness. He's an incredible whistler, and I think it's got a real value on the floor. Like, the Jordi whistle gets the attention of the players, and like I talked about this on air at one point, for which you correctly made fun of me, but I brought up my friend's mom growing up, Mrs. Carthall. She lived up the hill. Well, Mrs. Carthall, the way she whistled, like Al knew it was time to go home. Like Al just he had to leave when he heard that whistle. I feel like Jordi has that level of whistle wherever it just it gets that attention quick. And last year I had an appreciation for it, but this year I feel like he's taken it to a new level. And sitting there courtside, getting to hear the whistle, it's been one of my favorite things to witness, is the Jordi Fernandez whistle.
I love it. I love to hear it. Then I'm going to kind of stay off the beaten path.
Stay off the beaten path.
And I'm not just doing this just because we love them and we appreciate them, but the Nets content team. Go to Brooklyn Nets X or TikTok or the YouTube channel or IG, and it is just so entertaining. Sometimes, I know I come with a smile, but we all need moments that, really bring us some joy, and that's the place I go to. I got a special giggle out of this when they were digging through women's beauty products type of thing. And guys had to guess what they were. They had to call someone they love and tell them that they love them. Like, there's a variety of endless amounts of enjoyment that shed light on the players' personalities that I think, for as much as we look at the play on the floor, we can talk about, they're humans and they're funny, and they all have such tremendous and different, unique personalities. So, that's the storyline that just the gift that keeps on giving.
I love it.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Number 2 for me is going to be, I'm going to bring it back to Danny Wolf.
Okay.
And I'm going to say the Danny Wolf, Noah Clowney posters that have come lately, because those two have had, in the month of December, they've had a couple of just ridiculous dunks that have been punctuating and fun. And, I just think seeing the bench reactions to them, really, really fun moments. We broke down their games already. So we don't need to do that in this portion of the program. So I'm going to give you instead just their highlight. For me, those have been some really fun moments, getting to see, Danny has had a couple heat-seeking moments where he has gone for it and landed the plane, and so has Noah. And they've had him kind of in the same games at times, And for me, those have been just, over the course of 82 games, you want to find those little pieces of joy and enthusiasm, and those two guys have provided some really fun ones lately.
Oh, you kind of stole mine.
Oh, really?
It's a little varied.
Okay, go for it.
And it was kind of about the dunks, but more in a big picture. There's nothing, for as much as we've talked about this team and how we feel like they've come together, there's nothing that brings us more joy. Throughout the course of a broadcast, we're doing stuff, we're rolling to break. Think about how many times we show reactions and guys and what they do to the bench or the celebrations.
Yeah.
I feel like there has been moments, and I don't know why, like, a Tyrese Martin comes up to my head who he's doing his celebration of where he's like not even making any facial reactions, but like just like in the sense of like there's always a constant of all the players on the floor, dialogue and communication through celebration, through yelling, through back and forth on every play. Like a 3-point shot, a block, a dunk, something happens, someone's diving on the floor to get a steal, turnover, going the other way. And like, it's just, it never ends. And that to me is a sign of a really special group that appreciates playing for one another. When no matter who's on the floor, no matter who's on the bench, everyone is wanting the best for their teammates. And I think it seems like that should be a given.
Yeah, but it's not. No.
Number 3.
My third storyline, I'll make this one a little bit more basketball-y specific.
Basketball-y?
Basketball-y, a little more basketball-y specific. Or just a little more basketball-y, period. I'm going to say Nick and the way he's played. For me, if you were just like, if you watch Nick Claxton and his career, like there's been a lot of times where he has looked like a very capable top half of the league center on a contending team, right? Think about how his career started and how impactful he was playing with a few all-NBA guys, right? And how he felt like it looked like he fit in and was key to what they were doing as they had a championship-capable team, right? With KD and Kyrie and James. And Claxton felt like a guy who fit in there and could be impactful there as a starting center, belonging in that role. And then over the last couple of years, obviously the roster has changed. The expectations have changed. It's been a little more rebuilding, dealt with a couple injuries. This year, we're seeing him completely expand his game, and he's showing us what he's shown before and then some. For him to have 2 triple-doubles, for him to be shooting nearly 70% from the line, this is a guy who's mid-50s in his NBA career. And, shout out to, the shot Dr. Love, who clearly has made an impact for this team, right, for the Nets. But and we've seen, a few different people credit Dr. Love, as they call him, for what he's done with their shooting this season. Right. But Nick's development in particular as a hub offensively, what he has been able to do has been remarkable. And I feel like that's a huge storyline because he's the kind of guy you look at and you say, okay, I already thought he could be the starting center on a team that's ready to contend whenever the day comes. But now, he's added up new tools to that toolbox. I mean, his passing, his decision-making, his ability to put it on the floor, get his own, it's really been impressive. And then the fact that now when he goes to the line, you feel that much better about it. I think Nick's a huge storyline.
Yeah, I love all that. As we said, we've hit on a lot of different things, whether it's Michael Porter Jr., Noah Clowney, Jordi throughout the course of the pod. So those all, to me, and what you pointed on with Nick, encapsulates so many things with this group. These basketball-y terms. The passing and the assist numbers for this group. Yeah, defensively, there's a lot of things. You look at a player like Nick, you look at a player like a Day'Ron Sharpe, you look at everyone, they've had so many games where the balance of how they move the basketball, the people who are putting up big numbers in the assist column, what that looks like from players that maybe that's not necessarily what you anticipate to be the strength of their game in the quickness and how they're moving the basketball. I have loved how even on a lot of nights that shots have not fallen, or you go through stretches and ebbs and flows in games that you lose, and it's not your night, and sometimes collectively as a team that happens. I feel like the pace in which they are making decisions, passing the basketball, the nuances of the offense, the amount of different, just sophisticated looks and sets that they have and how they're playing off of it. And so much of that comes from the ball movement, to me, is like a really beautiful thing to continue to watch to grow. And it also is a very attractive thing for guys to want to play in. And I think that comes from playing for each other. I think that comes from obviously the coaching staff and how they've installed, but I think so much of the manner of which they're playing and how they're playing, it lends itself to continued growth of what this group can be the more they get comfortable with one another. And there's nothing I love more than to see beautiful passing.
Yeah.
So we'll put a pin on that and keep watching that, because I think it's just been a fun thing.
Love it.
Brooks, thanks so much for being here
Yeah.
with us. We enjoy having you as always. We're going to bother you to come back again. And
Can't wait. I look forward to it.
thank you again for joining us for Nets Pod with Sarah Kustok, presented by Ticketmaster. Don't forget, you can catch any of our episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, as well as the Nets YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, all that stuff, and share. And until next time, we'll see you then.